Benton Franklin County Libertarian Party, and I'd like to welcome everyone watching online and here in person to our first ever debate that we're hosting with Tracci Dial of KNDU. We are excited to talk about this topic because today is 420. Everybody knows the marijuana holiday. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Tracci, and then Tracci will take it from here.
Thank you so much, Brian. Yes, my name is Tracci Dial, and I'm a local journalist for KNDU and KNDU. I am so pleased to be a part of this timely debate. Should we end the war on drugs? So our participants tonight are former Washington State Representative Bill Jenkins. He's taking the position of no, we should not end the war on drugs. We also have Idaho Libertarian activist Joe Evans taking the position of yes. So Bill Jenkins served in the Washington House for 4 years, ending last year in 2020. He's involved in several local Republican organizations, and he is also still very involved in the Rotary. So thank you for being here today, Bill. Idaho Libertarian activist Joe Evans served 20 years in the U.S. Army and earned 2 bachelor's degrees from Boise State University. Go Broncos. Evans ran for the Idaho 1st Congressional District as a Libertarian in 2020 and is currently petitioning to legalize medicinal marijuana in Idaho. This debate, aptly scheduled on April 20th, 420, as a lot of people call it. I did look into the history of that. The truth of why it's a holiday is a little bit hazy, if you will, but we are lucky today to have Mr. Needham here. Mr. Needham is an expert. He's here to explain the history of the war on drugs. Shawn is the owner of Professional Pharmacy and author of Sickened, How the Government Ruined Healthcare and How to Fix It. Shawn and his wife Janet also host a podcast called Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where they discuss free market solutions to medical problems created by government regulations. So it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Needham today.
Thank you, Tracci. Well, thanks for having me out today. I'm super excited to talk about the history of the war on drugs. And, you know, you might find it odd that I'm a pharmacist up here talking about this because I'm kind of a rare thing because most pharmacists might have some different opinions as I do. I'm going to kind of keep my opinions a little bit to myself. I say that, but when I say that, I'm usually an opinionated person. So when I mean a little bit to myself, my opinions are still going to come out. And Tracci did a good introduction. Thank you so much, Tracci. Thank you, Benton County Libertarians, for having me out today. I'm super excited to do this presentation. My background, a little bit about my background. I went to the University of Washington School of Pharmacy in 1991. Let me tell you a story about one of the first conversations I had when I started thinking about the war on drugs. I've got an uncle, his name's Boyd, and a wonderful guy. He's a libertarian. When I was in 1991, I didn't really know what a libertarian was, okay? And he started talking about the war on drugs. And of course, I'm in the middle of pharmacy school. I just started pharmacy school. So, you know, I have been indoctrinated about, you know, how drugs should be regulated and all of that. So, and he's just talking about some of the things that he sees not working. He says, Shawn, what we're doing is not working. I took that to heart. I didn't really change my opinion, but I really took that to heart because it's like, well, 1991, not much different than it is now. Was it working? So that was at a Thanksgiving dinner, and I so appreciate my Uncle Boyd for being open and, you know, stating his opinions that night. One thing I want to get across is my wife's a pharmacist also. I'm a pharmacist, and we both have never smoked marijuana. We've never snorted cocaine. We've never shot heroin. I am not saying that to say I'm better than anybody. What I am saying is this is not personal for me. And I know a lot of times when I used to see about when people would want legalization of drugs, it was always a personal issue, it seemed like to me. It's like, well, you want it legal because you want it for yourself. That's not exactly what it is for me. I'm just all about liberty. I'm all about personal choices. I'm not saying good. I am not in this presentation saying drugs are good or saying drugs are bad. My goal is to educate and empower individuals that they should make an educated choice. It's a personal choice for their own health care. History of the war on drugs. Think about this. I think one of the greatest things that ever happened in this country for many things that we can make analogies to, including the current war on drugs. How do we define that? You know, when we define the war on drugs, we talk a lot about narcotics, and we talk a lot about the illicit drugs. But think about this. Back in the 1920s, alcohol was illegal. Look at this picture. I mean, there we are. There are federal agents pouring out alcohol. Would we ever think 100 years later that people would be dumping alcohol? The federal government would make that illegal. Just think about that. I think that's one of the greatest analogies that's ever happened in this country. And what it shows is that prohibition doesn't necessarily work. And what does it do? What does prohibition do? Anybody recognize that guy? All right, who is it? Al Capone. Al Capone, think about it. What did prohibition of alcohol do? It created Al Capone. It created the mob. Making it illegal, making alcohol illegal, created an underground, is what it literally did. Why? Look at that. Money, alcohol, guns, and the mob. Did you ever think that people would be killed over alcohol? People were being shot because they possessed alcohol. And because why? Because it was a black market, because it was illegal. So there was literally an underground. And that's when it got really expensive and it got really dangerous. So what are the lessons? Did prohibition of alcohol change demand at all of alcohol? All right, interactive portion. Talk out loud. No, it didn't. It did not at all. What did it do? It caused it to go underground and become dangerous. And people were being killed over it. What happened? Prices go up and supply is controlled by a few individuals. Basically, it creates a cartel, right? That's exactly what happened, okay? So, let's fast forward. Nixon, back in the 70s, he declares war on drugs. That's kind of why this is named that, because we've been talking about that for, 50 years. Created the DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency. That is basically the organization that classified drugs. There's 1 through 5 classifications. They classified drugs to an abuse potential. I'll get into that a little bit later. Actually, right now. So, marijuana, cocaine, heroin, LSD, methamphetamine, and there's a whole list of others, and they're, anything that's kind of related to them is called a class 1 substance. What is a class 1 substance? A class 1 substance is no currently medical accepted use and a high potential for abuse, per the DEA, the federal government's regulation. Per their definition, that's exactly what a class 1 substance is. So all those substances are still illegal federally. Is marijuana legal in the state? Yes, it is. More than just for medical, but even recreational use. Is marijuana still a class 1 substance by the DEA and federally illegal? Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. And there are still people that get busted with marijuana if they're not meeting the right government regulations. So what did this law create? Remember what prohibition of alcohol created? What did this law create? You guys recognize that guy? Yeah, right. So it created an underground. Did it change demand at all? No, it did not change demand at all. It created an underground. And what happens when things go underground? Boom. It's exactly what happens when things go underground. And think about this. People are being shot and killed over a plant. Think about that. I am not any way promoting marijuana, promoting any drug. I'm just saying it's kind of crazy that people are being shot over a plant. Just like alcohol 100 years ago. Pretty crazy that people were being shot over possessing or manufacturing alcohol. So here's some of the arguments, and I think this might come up in the debate tonight. I challenge some of the debaters to ask these questions, because this is what comes up. I, as a pharmacist, when I start saying this stuff, people say, oh, well, illicit drugs cost the healthcare system a lot of money. Yeah, you're right, it might, but guess what? If the federal government didn't pay for healthcare, it wouldn't cost the taxpayers a lot of money. Here again, I am preaching individual responsibility here. That's what I'm preaching. Individual liberty. Oh, drugs increase the likelihood people will steal. Does anybody, if drugs were exchanged in the free market, drugs wouldn't be expensive, illicit drugs wouldn't be expensive, and supply would go up, price would go down. Does anybody steal TVs from Walmart to buy alcohol? No. Did anybody steal things back in the 1920s when alcohol was illegal to try to get alcohol? Yeah, they did, because the price was so high and the supply was low. So, another thing is think about tobacco. Tobacco is another thing. We're letting the government pick. Tobacco's a plant. Marijuana's a plant. The government gets to pick what we should put in our bodies. Again, I'm not promoting either one. I'm just saying it should be an individual decision. Drugs are bad for people's health. Well, alcohol and tobacco kill way more people in this country, indirectly and directly, than illicit drugs, period. Prison. So the answer is prison. We should put these people in prison, right? Is that the answer? Well, imagine 100 years after Prohibition, and now it's reversed, obviously. Imagine putting somebody in prison over possessing or drinking alcohol. Think about that. Is that what we're doing today? These are questions to ask yourself. I'm not trying to sway your opinion one or the way or the other. These are just questions to ask ourselves. It's what I ask myself. So the real question is not really how we end the war on drugs. And that is just a smaller topic over. Oh, sorry, that didn't come up. Did that come up my slide? Yeah, it did. Should the government tell us what we can put in our bodies? At all. Think about it. It sets a big precedence. What's next? They tell us what kind of food to eat. Oh, don't speak too soon, because that's kind of already happening. So it should be an individual decision. I, as a healthcare provider, as a podcast, my goal is to educate and empower consumers to make their own individual healthcare choices. And that's basically, my wife's same opinion too. I don't want to speak for her, but I am kind of speaking on her behalf tonight, and I wish she could be here. But people should really be educated on making their own choices. And one of the things is that there are medicinal purposes for cocaine, for marijuana, and that education should go along with, other modalities of how we can stay healthy, whether it be exercise or whether it be how we eat and how we sleep, all those things. We totally believe in that. And education is a key. I can tell you this, as a pharmacist, my wife and I, we don't believe in drug therapy a lot of times to treat, we're not like regular pharmacists. We don't believe in traditional drug therapy to treat a lot of diseases that we treat in this country. When you think about people that are on 20 different medications for all these different diseases, there's got to be a better way. That's my opinion. And that's why it's so important to educate and empower individuals to make their own healthcare choices. Does anybody have any questions for me? No questions. You guys are way too easy. Questions?
Why did they make cocaine illegal?
Why did they make cocaine illegal? Ryan says. I'm repeating that for the audience.
I know the answer. I just want to see if you know.
I really do not. Tell me.
So back in the 1920s, when they decided that marijuana was bad because of reefer madness, rumor was spread that cocaine made black people bulletproof, and so they had to make it illegal because you don't want black supermen running around. That's the reason why.
So the reason is, and I'd have to do some research on it, Ryan Cooper says the reason is that cocaine was made illegal was because it made black people bulletproof. That was the rumor was. And, I'd have to do some research on that. Thank you for that, Ryan. I did not know that. Thank you for that comment. Any other questions at all or comments? Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to watch this debate tonight. Thank you so much.